Welcome to this episode of the Saddleback Pod. My name is Matthew Gillett. I am the host of the Saddleback Pod, and today we have Tammara on here of Smoothie and Stax, formerly Smoothie Queen. And we kind of met virtually, I guess, kind of just digitally messaging each other, and you kind of posted a question about something that you're working on that we want to obviously learn more. But let's just kind of get to know each other a little bit. Like, tell me a little bit about your journey. Tell me about yourself.
So I started Smoothie Queen in 2019. I was going to Tropical Smoothie a lot,
Yeah.
and spending a lot of money. And I was wondering, like, where can I find smoothie bowls
Okay.
in Lansing? I didn't know of a place that sold them. So I was like, what if I sold them?
Yeah.
And so I just started, at that point in time, I was, unemployed. I was trying to do photography because that's what I went to school for. I wasn't booking photography gigs, and I was just like, I need to do something. So I was like, well, what if I sold these acai bowls? You know how you see them online and they're so pretty?
Yeah.
And I was like, so that's how it started. I took a picture of the smoothie bowls because, photography background, and it kind of exploded on social media, like within my community. A lot of people were like, how can I get one? I was getting DMs and messages.
Really?
Like, people were like, can I buy one? Can I get one? And I was like, sure. So, the next thing I knew, there were lines outside of my apartment. I was just selling them at home. There were lines outside of my apartment of people wanting to buy these smoothies and smoothie bowls. And yeah, that's how it started.
Great. Great. So, did you really do it more for the photography side, or like just to kind of get the visuals? Because when I look at those pictures, I'm like, the colors are just, they pop, and I like when we do pizza and stuff, I get really excited. Obviously, I'm chasing flavor, but visually, I get that I try to implement colors and other things, other details in there, because I know at some point I have to reach my market. So, were you thinking about that as much as the flavor or the product, or?
It was a combination of both because I think with my photography background, I wanted my product to be visually interesting. So that's why I put the fruit slices on the outside of the cup because I could have just made regular, smoothies and just sold them. But I was like, I need this to pop. I need it to look interesting. So that's why I have them, like that.
So, what was your next step? Did you get into Allen Street, or were you trying to raise money, or what was your next step after that photo kind of went viral in your community?
Yeah, so I think for about a year, I was selling them out of my apartment.
Okay.
But that wasn't sustainable. And then in January of 2020, like right before COVID hit, I fell on hard times. I lost everything. And I was like in a transitional state of like living in my car, hopping from couch to couch. And the community that was lining up to get those smoothies, they helped me. They raised money to help me get stable again. And so during that time, COVID was brand new. It was scary, and people didn't really know like what was going on. So I was like, what if I was still chasing this dream. I was like, what if I did delivery? And so I was like got up early in the morning, made hundreds of smoothies, and I packed them in a cooler and I delivered them all across town, east side, west side, whatever, south side. And that's kind of what kept me afloat. And then that's when I decided, like, okay, I want this to be a legitimate thing. What do I need to do? So I learned about the health department rules and the things I need to do for that. I got my Safe Serve certificates, because we were locked down. We didn't have nothing but time.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, let's take this time and make the best of it. So I got my licenses and all that. I got my LLC, all of that during that time. I think that was like spring of 2020.
Okay.
And then in August that year is when I started in the incubator kitchen. That was before they even had the accelerator. So yeah.
And the incubator kitchen was at Allen Street?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for those who aren't familiar with Allen Street, it's basically how would you describe that?
So I would describe it as like it's a shared commercial kitchen for local entrepreneurs to come in and basically kind of prove their concept.
Okay.
They have farmers markets every Wednesday that we can be a part of. But it's really just to develop your product, get your name out there, and yeah.
Okay. So how long were you there for?
So I was there for about a year and a half. So I started there in August, and then I would say in February of 2021, that's when they finalized the accelerator kitchen. And so it was me, Mr. Leslie's Cheesecakes, Tantai. We were the pioneers. They were supposed to be Slow's Barbecue, but they are in Detroit, and so
Yep.
it didn't make sense for them, I don't think, to like do that. So it was us three. We started in there. It was a brand new space, all new appliances. Nothing had been used, like literally brand new. And yeah.
So you just kind of gave it a go, and
Mhm.
that's great. So what was that like? Kind of working independently there. I mean, I know you've got Marcus and Jose there, kind of on your
Yeah.
wing. Obviously the help of Allen Street, just their facility and their influencers there as well. Um, but how was that part of that journey? It's kind of like a lonely journey, right?
I think that took my business to a whole new level because, at first it was more of a like local, low key type of thing. And then when I was there, it like exploded. And I think also I want to credit the Lansing State Journal because they picked up on my story. I think I posted a video on TikTok about how, I went from having a business to sleeping in my car and, now I'm at this accelerator kitchen. And they picked up on that story and they wrote a front page cover about that.
Okay.
And a lot of people obviously saw that, and then they started flooding in.
Yep.
And I had lines to the door. I was like, and I like had to hire staff quickly, and I was like, I don't know what to do. Like,
Yeah.
this is my first time. So
It was tough. It can be obviously sales are great, right?
Yeah.
We want those, but like scaling quickly can be difficult.
mhm.
So you're there for a year and a half. Obviously had ups and downs. What was the ultimate reasoning for leaving Allen Street?
It was all that you just said, the inexperience. So I was scaling too quickly. I hired 6 people in that little teeny tiny space
Yep.
because I thought that I was being smart at the time, and we were overwhelmed, by all the people. I was like, oh, we need to hire all these people, and I didn't know.
Mhm.
So payroll was through the roof, and then you have overhead, and then you have inventory costs. And as someone who just was like, oh, I have a great idea, let me sell it. I didn't know any of those things
Yeah.
or how
Yeah.
to manage that stuff. And so obviously, I want to credit Jose because he really helped me, and he really helped me get my numbers down. Um, and like I didn't even know how much it cost me to make a smoothie when I was there, to be honest. But Jose helped me with that. He was like, here's how you break down food costs.
Yep.
Here's how you do this. So it was all kind of a learning experience. But the demand was there. Everyone loved my smoothies, and I was like, okay. I don't know, like it just felt like I was juggling, and then I was doing all the marketing, payroll, hiring, interview, like everything, opening, closing, all of that. So,
How much time were you putting in right during?
like, you mean at the shop?
I mean, yeah. I mean, you don't. I mean, you know this, but like as an entrepreneur, it's never really clock in, clock out. You're constantly the wheels are always spinning about the good and the bad. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's just that kind of that startup phase of how many hours would you say like you're putting in there? Because I always would say like we get a lot of we interview a lot of employees, and sometimes people are like, I work 100 hours a week, and I'll be like, well, do you though? I mean, I know it feels like you do, and because even in my like toughest times when Saddleback first started was, I put in a ton of hours. I still don't ever think it was 100 hours, like just a brute force, like. So what? But I always like to try to expose that of like how much work does it actually take.
Yeah.
And if you can put that into like just on of your story, like that first year, like how many hours were you putting in? Like how many hours were you clocked in, kind of behind the scenes doing your thing to keep this thing up and going and as stable as it could possibly be?
Yeah, it was literally an all day thing. Like I would wake up and I would go and buy all the things. I would go to Gordon's and like get all the fruit and Meyer and get all the stuff. And then I would open the shop, run it all day, and then I would close the shop, and then I would stay late and do marketing or answer emails. And so honestly, my days were like 12-hour days.
Yeah,
It was
that's
like
a lot.
from sun up to sundown. And I got burnt out. This is my
Real quick.
first time being a business owner. I didn't know anything about anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why it closed. I really think inexperience, but that also was the best teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know what I didn't know.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. It can be very, very difficult to kind of, you're growing, so you're actually creating problems.
Yeah.
You're inexperienced. You don't really know how to solve the problem, so it's kind of like you're just digging yourself in a hole the whole time, and fighting out of that can be kind of hard. And it doesn't go away. As you grow, you want to have the good problems,
Yeah.
like the opportunities, what to do in different situations, and it's constantly a learned battle is what I'm figuring out. So now at this point you've closed the doors. You made an announcement. Hey, we're stepping away from this for a little bit, and fast forward to where we're at here.
Yeah.
So what made you decide to kind of rebrand, kind of throw yourself back out there as far as building off the Queen model? I guess let's go back to that. Like, tell me a little bit about where you're at now, and kind of what you're trying to do moving forward.
Yeah. So, with Allen Neighborhood Center, it closed down. Well, I closed it down because I was trying to go into like a new location. But the thing was, I had got in debt. I'm not gonna lie. I got in debt, and I just couldn't sustain there. And so I was trying to pivot, but
With Allen Street or with okay.
yeah. And so I was trying to pivot, and it just nothing was panning out for me. So we had to close it down, and I felt like the world's biggest failure.
Yeah.
And so everybody kept messaging me like, when is Smoothie Queen opening, or like and I just couldn't even find the heart to tell people like, it's gone.
Yeah.
And so I put everything in a storage because I was like, well, maybe something will pan out. And I was talking to other business owners and things like that to see if they had, they wanted to like do a joint venture or something like that. But none of those things kind of worked out. And so after that, I kind of just was like, I gave up on it. I was just like, yeah, I tried it. This entrepreneur stuff isn't for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, maybe, the restaurant industry is too hard. The margins are too tight. Like, you don't make any money. And so I gave up on the dream. And so then years after, I decided, like, I need to reinvent myself. I need to figure out who I am. Because when I would go to grocery stores or whatever, people would come up to me like, Smoothie Queen. Like, that's my name. Like,
Mm-hmm.
people probably don't even know my name. They
Yeah.
just know me as Smoothie Queen. And so I was just like, who even am I anymore if I don't have this business?
Yep.
So I moved to Chicago.
Oh, geez. You got up out. Okay.
I was like, I just need to reinvent myself. So I moved there. And that was a fun experience. And then Summertime Shy changed the game for me because there was a food festival almost every other day. And I would go to these food festivals and I would see these entrepreneurs hustling, lines. And I was like, that was my heart, like, oh, you kind of miss it, don't you?
Yeah.
I was like, no, I can't. It's too hard. I was like, I can't do it. But then I just seen these entrepreneurs just like helping each other. And like, it just was so beautiful. And it just sparked that little drive in me again. And then also my community, they were saying like, are you going to bring smoothies back? Or what's happening with Smoothie Queen? Every other day. And that's not an exaggeration. Every other day I would get a message from people asking, to bring this business back. And I was just like, I don't know, y'all. It's hard. I don't, like, I can't do it. And
Yeah.
then I was just like, okay. I had to sit there and I was like, if I do this, I need to do it the right way. I need to learn everything I can learn. I need to get a mentor. I need to, just make sure I'm dotting my I's and crossing, what is the saying?
Teeth.
Yeah. Crossing my T's and dotting my I's, to make sure I do this the right way. And so I came back to Lansing and I was like, all right, I'm about to put my head down and get to work. I made a business plan. I have a 23-page in-depth business plan that goes through everything, my target audience and all the things, that I need to know, my numbers. One of my mentor friends, he was like, you need to get your numbers down.
Yeah.
Because that's your number one thing, like to run this business properly. And so I sat down and I drafted out all of my numbers, how much it costs to make a smoothie. And I know down to the cent. And I didn't
Yep.
know that before.
Okay.
I know a lot of people that probably are business owners watching this, like, yeah, duh. I just didn't know. So now I have all my numbers down. And yeah, I feel more prepared this time around. And I decided that I don't need a storefront right now. We're going to scale all the way down and we're going to do pop ups. And pop ups and catering, I think that's what I can handle
Okay.
right now where I'm at. Because the daily, storefront type of environment was a little too much. Having to hire employees and things like that. Maybe I'll get one, scale all the way down
Mm-hmm.
or whatever I can afford, like one or two employees, but we'll do pop ups. And so that's kind of where I'm at. And I was like, how am I going to raise the money?
Yeah.
Because now I'm in debt, so the banks won't, give me a loan, and I don't have fancy investors or anything like that. So I was like, what do I have? And I was like, I have a supportive community.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what if I did a crowdfunding campaign? I always have the most craziest ideas.
Yeah.
So
Well, crowdfunding is definitely a great way to raise capital. There's no doubt about that, and it can be very successful. What when you talk about your mistakes that you made in the past, and how you kind of overcome those, what resources did you use to overcome, to educate yourself a little bit better, to get kind of avoid some of these things moving forward? And I'm not really just saying that. I'm more saying that to the kind of listeners of like somebody who's like really like, I really like this idea. I'm not necessarily confident that she's overcome some of those things that she's admittedly made in the past. Like,
mhm.
what do you have to tell somebody like that?
I would say books and mentors,
Okay.
people who are experienced. So I'm gonna shout him out. Chad Cravings Popcorn.
Yeah.
He's been around for 17 years.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came back to Lansing, I worked at his shop, and I was asking him advice and things like that, about longevity, and things like how he was able to, stay.
Sustain. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he gave me solid advice. He's a great person. And then just books, financial books, marketing books, restaurant owner books, like startup books. There was a book I was reading called Hangry, from the from the founder of Grubhub.
Okay.
And it was like his story from start to finish. That was a really good read. How he started Grubhub and all the mistakes he made. And so, and just also a lot of reflection, like what really went wrong. And then just knowing where my pitfalls were,
Mm-hmm.
which are the wintertime, which is the wintertime, I should say.
Yeah.
And knowing that my sales slowed down there. And I was like, okay, so what do we do? And so that's why Smoothies and Stax was born, because I was like, we need a product that could sustain us all year round. Because smoothies are more of a seasonal product.
Yeah.
We kill it in the spring and summertime, obviously.
Sure.
But when that weather drops,
Becomes a little
our
difficult.
sales drop.
Yep.
And I was just like, what can we do? And also the name Smoothie Queen was trademarked.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was that too. I was like, I need a new name, and I want to add a product that, people would come all year round for.
Sure.
People like breakfast.
Yep.
So, and that's not that expensive to make pancakes, waffles.
Well, talk to me about that. So, from the product side, what are your offerings going to be?
Yeah, so we'll have our smoothies and smoothie bowls, but we're also adding pancakes, waffles, eventually French toast. But we would just want to keep it small and keep it scaled down to start.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so all those things.
Okay. And you mentioned pop-ups and caterings, and from your ideal situation from a sales standpoint, like what does that look like? Like, do you have that mapped out of like, I want to do, where am I doing my pop-ups? What's my catering market looking like? Like who are those people
Yeah.
or
So
spaces?
yeah, so we already have a booth at the Juneteenth Festival.
Okay.
So that's gonna be big for us. It's always big for us. Even when I was just had the smoothies, we would
Mm-hmm.
sell out every year. I've done it 2 years, and we sell out every year. Another festival is like the big downtown one is I think it's called Best of Lansing. That's what
Okay.
it's called. So basically like Lansing markets, the farmers market, the Meridian Farmers Market, That's a good one for us too. We do good there. So basically, we'll pop up all across Lansing at whatever festival. We'll probably even do our own pop ups too. And then I think I just want to do it that way because it's more of a more, I don't know the word I'm looking for. Contained? I don't know.
Um, I mean, I would. I've just never been in that model, so I don't have a.
But you guys do caterings.
Yeah, we do catering, but I mean they're pretty structured.
Okay.
You know, as in like we book these pretty fairly far ahead, and it's pretty organized where it's systematic at this point. When I first started, it was a lot like I think what you're saying, where just call me up and I'll figure it out type of thing, which is like a good thing and a bad thing. It was great then because I was like, yes, finally I got the call. This is a great order. You can just kind of manhandle your way through it. The downside of that obviously was all the other contributions. For me it would have been something like if they ordered, say, 50 pounds of pork and I cook 60, it's like, what do I do with the other 10? Yeah. That ultimately is going to affect my bottom line because my licensing at the time didn't really involve refrigeration and rollovers or anything like that. I tried to operate within those guidelines as closely as I could, but ultimately that was the negative part. Like I would always look at my product and say, just for an example, this rack of ribs cost me $10. I bought, they come in packs of 3. I only need 10, so I bought 12. What do I do with those other 2? Normally I would just eat them. Yeah. But the reality of it is like, with the margins, you mentioned that being so tight, it's like those 2 ribs were a fair part of that margin. Yeah. So really what I did was this catering for 2 racks of ribs. Mm-hmm. So those are the problems that I kind of hit early was just being able to manage those, just being so precise on whatever I purchased the product for, being able to roll that actually into a sold product at the margin that I wanted to, because I normally was like my worst enemy. Yeah. And I'm sure you can probably relate to some of those. Like if you buy, I don't know, three things of strawberries, like how many shakes is that going to, in produce world, like there's no way, like they're not all uniform. They don't all yield the same. So all those kinds of things, I could see that as a challenge, pushing forward. But that's ultimately the only experience that I have in that type of amount. We've never really done any farmers markets. Are those? How expensive are those to get into? Because everybody, like, that seems like the easy one of like, a lot of people say go the farmers market, but I was under the impression that like, a residency at Meridian was kind of pricey.
From what I remember, I haven't done it since 2021.
Yep.
But it wasn't that bad. It was relatively affordable.
Oh, okay.
And then you would make money and you would make it back for sure.
Okay.
I wanted to say too, while I was listening to you speak, that's what I like is I learned now to be teachable, to ask questions because you don't know what you don't know. And how you were saying, what you were just describing, I'm like, okay, he's smart. Maybe I need to ask him more questions after this.
No, ask the questions away. We can maybe work through some stuff. The reason I ask you about like how you learn through some of these things was most times, I go through this weird learning phase of like, is it better to listen to like a podcast? Is it better to dig into like, maybe long form YouTube or maybe even a TikTok on some short form stuff? Is it better to read a book? And I kind of talk myself in and out of all these avenues. And what I mean by that is like somebody wrote a book at some point and put a lot of thought and energy, used a lot of resources to come up with this idea. It had probably older books had to go through some sort of publisher. The publisher would probably have to, read through it, think that it's sellable, it's marketable, it has stand, and that it makes sense because it was more of a business. Well, now that we've pushed forward, all of it seems like, and I fall victim to this all the time. I'll listen to a guru or somebody that has business experience, and they say 2 sentences that resonate to me. Yeah. but I don't know in what context it means. So even though it's resonating with me, I don't know if that's actually a good thing or a bad thing. It's like I'll come into the office firing and like, blah, blah, blah says we should drop everything that doesn't make money and focus on one thing. And that's all that we should do. And like, he made it sound so easy. And I'm going, well, geez, man, right now we've got 10 different buckets that generate some sort of money. Are we killing 9 of these? Is that what we're going to do right now? Kill 9 of these projects? So it's like it sounds great and it sounds really good, but then when you put it into actual real context, it's like, maybe they are right. We should be doing this, and that's why we're in positions that we are. Or maybe they're absolutely not right, or maybe I heard them out of context or anything. So I always like to hear, like, how are you learning about things? How are you educating yourselves? Because it's the same thing with, like, restaurants don't make any money. It's like, that's just kind of true, and it's kind of not true. I mean, there's billionaires that are involved in the hospitality space. And it's probably the most talked about. It's the biggest employer I'm pretty sure it's the biggest employer in the state of Michigan. We'd have to look that one up. Yeah. If I had young Jamie here right now, he would be looking that up. What's the biggest employer in Michigan? Is it hospitality space? If it is, that's a big one. But what I'm trying to say is like that's the buzzword that you hear, right? There's no money, but if you can find a way to make money around it, whether that's like a low overhead situation where you can break through that kind of break-even point. Yeah. Now your margins become so much more attractive, especially if you can scale way past that. Where, damn healthcare, always losing to healthcare. Is like auto insurance next?
I did see something about Ford being pretty high.
Damn it. That those are all kind of things in there. So it's always just good to kind of hear what somebody else has to say about where they get their information and how. And as somebody who feels like if I'm not absorbing information, I'm going to be left behind. It seemed for me, I just struggle with where do I get my information from and for what reasons. Because the other thing is that, and we know this, right? As as a content creator, is that you're chasing likes, like you're chasing followers, you're chasing hits. So I use the kind of the analogy of like, I used it earlier where I'm saying I make this pizza, I want it to look very good. Yeah. The reality is I don't give a shit how it tastes, right? I want somebody to visually look at it and hit, oh, that looks great, that looks amazing. And I feel that sometimes that kind of goes the same way with regurgitating, content of like, I'll say whatever it is as long as it gets like some traction here and we can kind of blow up. So anyways, long way of saying, I'm always interested to see how people soak in their information. No, all that sounds good. Tell me about your food products. You brought up pancakes, you brought up waffles. I kind of saw, it was funny. I was looking at your page and I saw that the mini pancake machine type thing. Oh, yeah. Well, the funny thing is when I bought one of the restaurants, it had one of those. I still have it. And I didn't, until like, I knew what it was, but I'd never seen anybody else actually use one. So it's like literally brand new, sitting in one of our storage places. And you're the first person I've ever seen like have one of those. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, they're kind of trending on TikTok right now.
Okay.
But that's not why I did it. I wanted to do like a scaled down version of it. Because I have, we all have our end goal in our mind. Yeah. And I was just like, okay, it's going to be, this is like I always tell people, this is phase 1. Yep. I have my end goal in mind, but I'm like, how can I do a small scaled version of that? So really it's more so, let me explain. It's like a build your own brunch concept. Because I was just like, smoothies are kind of, like I said, a seasonal product. So what if we did like a build your own brunch and kind of turn this new business, Smoothies and Stax, into a destination grab and go brunch model. And so that's kind of why I introduced pancakes and waffles, because I was like, that could hopefully sustain us all year round. Mm-hmm. But again, I still want to test the concept, and that's why I'm doing pop-ups. And also a low overhead, because in my mind, how it works is I would rent the incubator kitchen for a few hours just to prep. So that's like making the pancake batter, the waffle batter, cutting the fruit. Then we take all that stuff to Juneteenth Fest or whatever and sell from 3 p.m. to 11, and there's lines of people. This is where the people are. That's where you want to be.
Yep.
So there's lines of people. We got our tent, our flags. People are like, oh, what's that? Oh, they're selling smoothies.
Yep.
And so I'm like, that's visibility, low overhead. In my mind, I'm thinking this is high margin. This is a good idea. I don't know if it is or not. I want your opinion now. I'm curious, but yeah, that's how I think of it.
Yeah, I don't know a ton about the breakfast space. I would assume that like the waffles and the pancakes are probably pretty good margins on those.
Yeah.
Like, gosh, it's tough. Again, I'd have to see kind of your product mix and like what you're actually your recipe builder and see that side of it. But if it should be fine. I assume. I always get concerned on like things like, we're obviously in a meat industry, so that we know that that's volatile, and produce, obviously the shelf space and the that kind of stuff can be, if you're not moving through it, it's done. I just purchased Coaches, and I'm looking at their kind of model, and they do things a little bit differently than I do, and there's some things that I really love about it. Like that's smart, that's. And then there's other things that I think too deep about. Like, man, we could probably do this XYZ better, but it's like it just does work.
Yeah.
So it's like why change it if it works? Yeah, I don't. If I was looking at kind of your direction, that it looks like you're going, the things that I would probably say from the beginning would be like try to get as consistent as possible with these places so that you can roll over as much as you can. I would probably put out, I would assume you got it, but like some sort of catering menu or something like, what does this look like? Because ultimately, I think that breakfast catering model is a real thing. Like if you could just show up with, 12 cups of those, pancakes with like 12 smoothies and, feed an office, like that's where like I think that those pharmaceutical reps or people that are delivering be pretty important. I know I am assuming that they are sick of just bringing donuts and bagels and coffee to these early morning meetings, and I know they want to bring something. So those types of individuals have been really supportive of us in the past. And I know that that's one of those consistent revenue streams that you might be able to get multiples on. What kind of food licensing are you looking at?
So it would be the what is it called, the STFU license.
Yeah. Okay.
And then also I wanted to go back to what you said. So yeah, for catering, we got in really good with this. I believe they're a dentist office, and they were consistently like every other week.
Yeah.
Like I was like, oh, this is great. But that was towards the very end of Smoothie Queen, so I do have to circle back and be like, hey, we're back.
Well, building those, if I'm spewing this, and I should probably be taking my own advice on this one. A really good way to kind of do that is just guerrilla marketing. It's just knocking on literally dentist office, optometrist, those kinds of larger office scales of just saying, introducing yourself. Because normally I think the gatekeeper sometimes is the front desk person.
Yeah.
Like it's not ultimately like the doctor that's making these decisions. It's normally probably that person who's answering the phone saying, hey, can I get in for a meeting to see XYZ, to pitch them on XYZ? It could be as easy as, yeah, absolutely. Like this time works. Will you be bringing, I think that's how it works. Like not being in that position. So, but those consistent caterings are, that could be enough for you right there, where you don't have to be out there on, I'm not saying you don't want to be out there on Juneteenth or something like that, but that, 90-degree day trying to make smoothies with all the things going on. It's I can imagine the uphill battle. Yeah. So I don't know. It just comes back down to like a solid business plan of like, when somebody talks to me about a food venture, normally where it goes kind of crazy is the idea part. Is that they want to do all these different things, and I'm on the other side saying, I'd probably keep it as simple as you can. I'm not saying don't try other things, but from a brand standpoint and from like a just this is what we do. Just keep it as simple as you can. Otherwise, you're going to I think you're going to focus on all these different things. And the same thing goes with how you're selling your product.
Yeah.
Of like, if you want to just embrace the pop-up world, then I would say, dude, I would grind out. I would start signing or like literally mapping your calendar out right now, like today, and going, these are the events when I'm doing them. What's my radius of how far I'll travel? Try to get to those softball tournaments and soccer tournaments where like you're going to be one of 3, one of 4, where you're not getting lost in the shuffle. You're the only, like, I look at your product as it's a health thing. So like, those types of athletic events where they have a bunch of people that are somewhat trying to be conscious of their nutrition that day, like that could be a huge win for you. And a lot of those things, like, you can find them on a community page. They want you. So there's not more, it's not the other way around where it's like, a big music festival where it's going to be $1,500, $2,000 just to get in the door. So you're negative 2,000 before you even sold a smoothie. Like those are places that I would try to stay away from. Not that they're not. Obviously they want those to be very lucrative for their individuals, but at the same time, it's always like, man, I guess we do that with the storefront. Like we're negative X amount before we even open the doors, but. Those were always challenging for me. I can never swallow that pill of like, what happens when the thunderstorm comes through here or something and you guys just stop playing music? Like, what happens?
Yeah.
Nothing. You just go home. Okay, great.
Yeah, but in Lansing, I will say, like, the vendor fees, it's not that hard to get into these festivals and events. I think the most vendor fee I've paid was like $175.
How many customers does it take to make that up for you?
175? So.
Like, so how I look at it like.
You got me doing math.
Well, I just look at it like, so if you're minus 175 and 50 people line up at your store, at your thing, when do you actually turn a profit? Like because your profit, your margin is only going to go to that 150 first. So if you make $2 a thing, that means that it's 75 customers that it takes for you just to break even.
Yeah.
So then it's like, now you got to go even further. So I always think that a lot of people look at that number like it's not that impactful, but I also look at it like, okay, well, if it's not, you tell me how many customers you're going to expect from that day. You tell me at what point you're going to hit the break even mark, and at what point you're going to actually start making some real money. And I think people look at it like it's only $175, but if you're only selling $400 that day, that's a large increment of money. So if you're going to go in there and say, I'm going to buy product for 2,000 customers, I'm expecting to sell 2,000 customers this day, I would agree. 175, not a big deal.
Yeah.
But if it's the other way around and we're like 4, I'm like, that's where I would disagree and say, that is a large amount of money. That's going to be a really big impact on what your day is going to do. And it's a lot of risk if you crap the bed or, the festival sucks.
Yeah. And also, me and Jose were just talking about this. You have to pick the right festivals because that makes all the difference. And I will say Juneteenth, I know last year they said they had around 5,000 people. I know the first year that I did it, just selling smoothies, and I would just pack my smoothies in a cooler and bring them. Mm-hmm. We made around $3,000.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so now
is that sales or not?
That's sales.
Okay.
I kind of still get confused with but yeah, that's just sales. But that was when we brought pre-made smoothies to the festival, but now we're trying to make them on site. So that's why people are like, why do you need that big number for the GoFundMe campaign, 15,000? Because we're trying to make them on site. So that's blending smoothies and like giving them fresh to people. Because that way, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I look at it is like, if we don't sell, we just pack up everything and go home. We're not wasting product, pre-making all of them and bringing them and then having to throw them all away.
Yeah, kind of. So with we carry an STFU license, and I think if you follow health code properly, and like if your time control is correct and you're documenting everything, I do think you're allowed to bring it back to a commercial kitchen.
Yeah.
So whether that's where, like, if it was Allen Street and you had refrigeration space, I think you can do that. What you're technically, I'm air quoting, not supposed to do is like put it in a cooler, throw ice on it, put it in the back of your car, take it to your house, sit on it. Now, I'm not saying that I've done that, but I do know that people obviously do that, or they'll prep at their own house and bring it out.
No,
It's
you
like
can't do
you're
that.
not supposed to do that, but I know it's done. But yeah, that's a huge advantage in that scenario. That cuts down on your waste, and I think that STFU license is great. Like
Yeah.
if you're in that food world, I think I think the way that you're trying to grow this is the right way. It's like
thank
not a
you.
huge investment. You know, it's
Yeah.
not a ton of capital. It gives you a lot of opportunity to pivot. You know, you're not just bottlenecked into a space. You can kind of grow with yourself ultimately and learn a little bit about what am I doing right, what am I doing wrong, without like these heavy lifting things of like I've got 20 employees, I've got all these, you know, I got to pay for the lights, the gas, the insurance.
Yeah.
It still kind of gives you a little bit of that, but it also gives you room to grow too. So I think that is when somebody asks me like what's the best way to get in the food service, that's what I normally say is like figure out a way to do something with this kind of license. It doesn't pin you down.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to put a second mortgage on your house. Anything like that. So from a customer base standpoint, like you know, and I'm using customer as somebody that's going to invest in you. What would you want to tell them?
So, well, first, my smoothies are 100% dairy free. A lot of people use either milk or yogurt or anything like that. So we try to be allergen friendly. Not try to be. We are allergen friendly. And then also, it's unlike anything else you can really get in Lansing. You can get smoothies from everywhere, but not our smoothies.
Yeah.
Our smoothies are like, you know, like I said, the dairy free, and then we just craft it like it's cute, it's customizable. You take a picture. You know, I think who inspired me the most. Maybe I shouldn't say this. We might have to edit this part out. But I was gonna say, you know how like Starbucks has the customizable drinks.
Sure.
People love that. It became a culture, and so that's kind of my inspiration behind my customizable, you know, smoothies.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then also the breakfast. So let's say you're like, okay, I want these protein pancakes. You can add strawberries on top. You can do peanut butter, chia seeds. You can make it as healthy as or unhealthy as you want. You know, we'll have syrups and all different types of things. And then, yeah, to answer your question in a long-winded way.
Yeah, I think that, you know, somebody that I think if you're a local person in the greater Lansing area that, you know, has a care for community and you know wants to see I always see a lot of the Lansing needs this, Lansing needs that, why doesn't Lansing? Well, some of it is that there are people like yourself that are trying to get things going.
Yeah.
And it wants to grow a small business so that it's like somebody in Grand Rapids saying, why doesn't Grand Rapids have a Smoothies and Stax? You know, and I think that if you're one of those people out there that's constantly, I don't want to say screaming on their soapbox, but like has views of like why things haven't grown or aren't going in maybe in the direction that they necessarily want, or the ideas aren't coming in. This is one of those ideas that I like, where it's like, you know, it doesn't take you as an investor a ton of money, or like you're not going to go broke, but a little bit goes a long ways.
Yeah.
And it could really show promise quickly. You know, like by this time August, there's a chance that everything was funded. You know, you've got multiple events under and you're just in a totally different position.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of like if you're in the Lansing area and you get inspired by entrepreneurship, that this seems like a good bet. You know, and it's not something that's like unattainable or unreachable for the community to see success of a model like this.
Yeah.
So that's really where I would look for it, as like screaming from the top. Like I you know, of course there's other smoothie places out there, there's other breakfast places, and you know, there's obviously competitive advantages for what you've got to offer, but ultimately somebody out there needs to really realize that they want to put money in you.
Yeah.
You as a person, you as an entrepreneur, that they want to believe in you, your messaging, what you stand for, where you're going to go, where you're going to take this thing. And if they can do that, then I think that they can, you know, chip out $25 towards your goal and get there. You know, what are your final thoughts? Where can people reach you? What what's the best way for them to, if they listen to this and they're encouraged by it and they're like, I'd give that a go, or I miss Smoothie Queen. This sounds like this is wonderful.
Yeah, so our crowdfunding campaign is currently at $3,500,
With a goal of
15K.
okay,
So we're 24% funded, but I'm really encouraged because the Lansing Foodies just posted it on their platform, and they have 79,000 people in that group.
okay,
And I just want to tell people that this is truly a comeback story. This is like what happens like when you fail and you learn
hmm
and you're like, okay, I'm going to try this again. And I want to see it through the end because the demand is there. People love my product. And like people who have never even tried a smoothie have donated. And I've gotten messages of people like, I believe in your dream. Like, I love your ambition, your hustle. Like, this is so inspiring.
yep,
Like, I can't wait to try it. I'm going to donate so that this can become a thing. And I've gotten like plenty, like, I don't even know how, like, hundreds of messages like that. But yeah, people are amazing. And yeah, people even donated to my, what is it, Amazon wish list. Somebody was like, you should post your Amazon. I was like, what? So I'm now getting boxes. I don't know, but people, for whatever reason, believe in me. I appreciate that. It inspires me. It moves me. And I think it's just really authenticity. I'm just showing up and hustling and trying to chase this dream after failing time and time again, after having to live in my car and be like, you know what, I don't give up. So, yeah.
yeah, and I just don't, like, fail's always a tough word, right? It seems so harsh, but without failing, and we all fail. We
Yeah.
all fail on multiple levels. Yours just happens to be in this particular lane,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't look at it as negative. I would look at it that that's a proven track record of the things not to do, and I'm well aware of that.
Yeah.
The other side is somebody who's 5 years ago, and that's a more dangerous person. Probably an unsafe investment at that point. But now you've seen some of these hurdles, so I think that's very attractive. I think that, just your character of get back on your feet. I think that embodies a lot of what Lansing is.
Yeah.
It's a fighting community. It's a community that wants to succeed. That it will do what it takes to get that first, second, third, fourth chance. And I think we're there with this idea, and that really stems from you. So this has been a great conversation. I mean, I love your story. I love your honesty and openness about like where you've
Thank
came from
you.
and where you're going. And
Yeah.
any final thoughts or anything that you want your customer or people out there to know?
I just want to encourage people to share and donate to the crowdfunding campaign, because the more that people rally behind that, the more I can, do these vendor fees and things like that. So I'm starting from scratch, but we're buying equipment as we go. Like you said, I got the little mini pancake thing.
I can
So
give you another one of those if you needed to. So
I might
if
need
you want to
that.
just go straight pancakes, you've got two now.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm excited. My goal is to have everything fully funded before the end of May, so that way we can really take the summer by storm and be out there. Cause yeah. So just
No,
donate.
warms up. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I wish you the best of luck with your crowdfunding. We'll do what we can to kind of get it off, to help it get a little more action. But yeah, let's once you get funded and get on your way, we'll have to do another one of these and see kind of the second step of your journey.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring you guys smoothies, but I just didn't have
Oh,
time.
it's fine.
And I didn't want to be late. So
No,
I was
you're all
like, well,
good.
maybe they'll appreciate me being on time.
No, you're all good. All good. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.